guys, it's Nikki here. I'm here today just to do a quick kind of spoiler review slash chat for the first book in the Harry Potter series, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone by J.K. Rowling. This is actually my mom's edition. I no longer have a physical edition, and I didn't really want to read my ebooks again, just because I enjoy holding a physical book over an ebook. That being said, I'm gonna do a quick summary here. The first book in the Harry Potter series is short and sweet. It has pretty good pacing through the entire thing. You really get a good idea of the world and the characters based on how J.K. Rowling introduces them and writes about them as Harry gets to know them better. And I think it just provides a really good base for the series that is just really accessible to a wide audience. It isn't just the middle grade audience that I believe it was originally written for. People of all ages have really come together and enjoyed this book over the years. I'm going to do something a little different here. I'm just going to do some positive, negative chat points. I'm not going to bother splitting that up into likes and dislikes and characters, just because I know I'm going to just go on forever about some of these points, and I wanted to make this as short and sweet as possible to match the feel of the book. The first point I want to mention here is actually a positive for me, and it's something I kind of mentioned briefly in the summary. So the story itself is about Harry. He gets introduced to the brand new world, wizarding world that has existed around him for his entire life, but he has not been a part of until this point. And it is basically him coming up against the weakest version, but still terrifying version of the man who tried to kill him and did not succeed. So for the review, I'm just going to do some talking points here. Some are likes, some are dislikes, but mostly I'm just doing them in no specific order. And I know I'm going to get a little wordy with these, so I am trying to just nip it in the bud a little bit by giving myself a slightly different setup than I typically do for a spoiler review. Plus, basically everyone and their grandmother has read Harry Potter. The first point is how the characters are established. I think J.K. Rowling does a really good job with this. She introduces them by kind of introducing them as a specific stereotype. So like Hermione is the overachiever, but then as you get to know her, you learn she can bend a little bit for her friends, but she has this insane drive to be better than everybody else. And that's why she is this overachiever. It's not necessarily because she's just innately intelligent, even though she is. It's just she has this drive to beat other people, and she's not really friendly about it, and she's not like demure about it. She's very aggravating, and she's very brusque, and I loved that about her. And then you get Ron. He is kind of turns into your stereotypical best friend, but then he ends up playing a slightly different role than you'd expect as the series goes on. You see a little bit of it with the chess match at the end of the first book here. There's a lot going on underneath the surface with him, and there are some strengths that, while they don't seem like strengths in terms of academia, they will get him very far in life. And then you get Harry. Kind of a typical chosen one. However, for me, the slight difference here is that he doesn't necessarily know that he's going to fulfill that role, and he was raised outside it, which by some turns makes him a lot better choice for the chosen one trope because he is a lot more grounded and steadfast. But then it puts him at a great disadvantage for the chosen one part because he is so disconnected from the wizarding world that he doesn't understand the impact he has on it, or that his personal history has on the wizarding world. And so I like the differences there to just your typical chosen one. Also, he's not just your kind of Mary Sue chosen one either. Like, yeah, he is just good at Quidditch, but he works to continue to get better at it, and he is not good at magic at the beginning, and he works his damnedest to be able to control it and effectively cast spells. The next point I want to talk about is actually a negative one here. I mentioned it in my spoiler-free video. It was how slow this first book started. I really forgot how long it took to get to Hogwarts, because like the 2 weeks or whatever it is but leading up to Harry getting his letter and then getting his school things and then going to school, I forgot it took like half the book. I think it was on to page like 50, and I'm like, when? It's like, what? How are we not already at the school? Because the school goes by so quickly. And it wasn't like a huge negative, it was just something I forgot, and it took me aback. It took me a bit to get into the plot a little more because of the slow start. You do get attached to the characters, I find, really early on, but it's just the plot is what is a little bit harder to connect to when it's laid out the way it is with such an extended exposure to pre-Hogwarts with Harry. And then the next one, I actually really enjoyed kind of the whimsy with Diagon Alley. I know that it's kind of a rough world, like it is not a world that I find is kind to children, and it's not a world that is like super safe, but the feel of the wizarding world as described, I always felt like it was more almost medieval. Like they wear cloaks and robes, the buildings are going to just be older, and they're going to be using candles and not electricity, and there's just going to be kind of that general grubbiness that I always feel with things associated with like old times that where the hygiene and upkeep of things aren't as high on the list as they are now. Despite how dank Gringotts is, and despite how strange and terrifying Ollivander is, because you're experiencing so much of this from Harry's point of view, there's just that touch of whimsy on everything you interact with this first time you go to Diagon Alley. And it's just, it really helps get you that kind of immersion into the story that I like. As kind of, I'm sure a lot of people have mentioned, and I know I mentioned in my spoiler-free video, I didn't really care for the ending in this book. I don't know what it is other than it was just rushed, and like Harry's ability to be Quirrell was like super convenient, almost laughably so. And although I know, and I think especially in these first two books, you really get that feeling when Harry's beating the big bad at the end. I know that gets lesser as the series goes on, so I'm not too worried about it, but just in the first book, I forgot how like awfully convenient everything was. Like the fact that Ron was the one that they did the chess before the potions, and that Hermione didn't get taken out in chess, and then Hermione was the one that was left to help Harry with the potions. It's just very convenient, and because of that, and because of how rushed the ending was, I didn't really care for it. I really enjoyed the plot, like I mentioned in the opening. It was really accessible, and even though the Chosen One trope and the Chosen One stories have been done before, I really enjoyed the way this one was written, and it really set up well for the continuation of the series. And then my final negative was just the lack of definite answers for the magic system. I know soft magic systems typically aren't as well explained, but usually they do have some kind of limit. In the first book, you kind of get like an idea of like, oh, this must be the limit, but then Harry burns Quirrell with his hands because love, and that just completely destroys like where the maximum limit for magic is for me. And I remember being very confused about it the first time I read it, and when I come across it now, even though I expect it and know it's there, I still, the disconnect between the rest of the magic in the book and that scene just always bugs me a little bit. And that's all I really have to say about this book. Like I said, this book is one of my favorite books in the series. This is one of my favorite series that I've read growing up, and I still enjoy it today as an adult. I give this book a 4.5 out of 5. It's not perfect, but it gets pretty damn close. It's a short, sweet read with good pacing, good world building, accessible writing, and accessible characters. And it's really good for a broad audience, which was really awesome because that allowed, especially for my family, for us to really, all four of us, connect over it, because we are all of different generations and we read it at different times in our lives, and yet we all enjoyed them, which was exciting for me as a kid, and it's something I relive in my nostalgia when I read these books and as an adult. Although this is a slow start, it really is a good read. It's a magical adventure with a cast of characters you can connect with on some level, and it's a book that defined the childhood of many people, and if you haven't read it yet and you want to read it as an adult, I would say by all means try. I do not think you'll be disappointed. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.